Greetings viewer, today I'm driving the Skoda Enyaq, the Czech interpretation of the VW ID.4, and it's a very different interpretation based on the same ingredient. Yes, both vehicles are built on the same MEB platform supplied by the VW group. It has the same rear-mounted motor, in this case the most powerful one, which makes 204 horsepower, and the same battery packs. This one is the largest available. It has 82 kilowatt hours capacity, but its usable capacity is actually 77 kilowatt hours. Skoda quotes this vehicle as being able to do 535 kilometers on one charge of its battery, according to the WLTP test cycle. But in the real world, you should expect it to deliver around 420 kilometers of range. If you drive it exclusively on the motorway at motorway speeds, then range will probably drop to around 300-ish kilometers, which is still pretty good. Skoda quotes this vehicle as being able to average around 15.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But so far, driving in this ridiculous Bucharest traffic, I've been averaging 28.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, so yeah. You can charge the Enyaq at up to 125 kilowatts, although in order to have access to this charging speed, you need to pay extra. As standard, I think it's 60 kilowatts. I was fortunate enough to get to drive the ID.4 not so long ago, and I can already tell you that I prefer the Skoda Enyaq. I also think it's even more comfortable. It has a more comfortable ride, although that may have something to do with the fact that my tester has optional adaptive dampers. Granted, the car that I'm driving today is quite a bit better spec'd than the ID.4 that I drove, even though that car was the first edition. And first edition vehicles are usually very well spec'd, because the manufacturer wants to show off all the gadgets that it can put on the vehicle. But this Enyaq is even better spec'd. It has a full leather interior, and the leather extends all the way to the dashboard. In versions that don't come with leather, you will get the same fabric that you have on the seats here on the dash. The Enyaq also somehow feels a bit roomier inside, although you are not left wanting for space inside the ID.4, it has to be said. The vehicle itself is actually slightly longer, 7 centimeters longer than the ID.4 to be precise, but I'm not sure if its wheelbase is any longer. I don't think it is. I'll check it out and put it on screen here. The Enyaq's boot is 585 liters as opposed to 543 liters in the ID.4. Not a massive difference, but it is a difference in favor of the Skoda. All Enyaqs get this huge 13-inch screen, landscape orientation, and the infotainment software is actually the same as Volkswagen's, only this gets a Skodified screen. And it looks pretty good, and it works just as well as it does in the ID.4. Sometimes some menus take a bit too long to load, and it sometimes snags when you move from screen to screen. But really, it's pretty good. I would give it an 8 out of 10. It's a decent infotainment system, and the screen itself is certainly a highlight. What I'm not so sure about is the volume control, which you can operate using this touch bar here, which is quite temperamental. For instance, sometimes it works. If you're wet, for instance, or if your hand is even mildly moist, it will not work. But the screen itself is very responsive. Oh, this car also has a heated windscreen. Climate controls are displayed in the lower part of the screen, and they are always there, although you have a shortcut here that allows you to control more settings, such as enabling the heated steering wheel, which you can also do on the steering wheel itself, turn on AC, adjust ventilation speed, select where the air goes, and all of that. Materials quality is also really good in the Enyaq. You get soft touch materials on top of the door cards, the front ones at least. The top of the dash is all nice and squidgy. This leather is also very pleasant, and it has memory foam underneath it, so it's pleasant to the touch. The plastic on the A-pillars is also quite nice. It has a cool texture that matches the fabric on the headliner. And around the speaker grills, you have this very interesting pattern that, well, it looks very good. And the door pockets up front are lined in felt, so your belongings don't rattle around in there. I also like the design of the door handles. I'm a big fan of this car's interior style, at least in this very well-spec'd guise. My tester also has the sport steering wheel, and it's a lot nicer looking than the normal two-prong steering wheel. And the feel of the steering wheel is also very premium. The driving position seems a bit higher than in the ID.4, but since this is a crossover, I think this is what people actually want. They want to sit up high and just like look over traffic jams. Space in the back is also gigantic. I have plenty of knee room, headroom, shoulder room, all kinds of room. There are no problems with room in the rear for rear passengers. Even if they're super tall, they'll still fit quite comfortably. And since this is a Skoda, there are plenty of cool solutions all around the vehicle. For instance, you get an umbrella in the driver's door. It also has double glazing on the front windows. There are also two configurable plastic pieces that you can put in the boot, and they will stop stuff from rolling around in there. The boot floor also has an adjustable height. And when you fold down the rear seat, you get 1,710 liters of space in the rear. If you were to buy a cheaper version of this without all the bells and whistles and just use it for its utilitarian purpose to carry stuff around in the rear, it would make a lot of sense, especially if you would have to deliver something on a short distance route over an uneven road. Something like this would be pretty good, especially if you want to go green and not emit any tailpipe emissions, you know. When it comes to the exterior of the Enyaq, it has to be said that Skoda was far more conservative than Volkswagen. This looks like just another Skoda SUV. It could be the Kodiaq if you look at it from a distance. Skoda even gave it a full-sized fake grille that doesn't serve any functional purpose. And you can even have that grille illuminated at extra cost. My tester has the full matrix LED headlights. Skoda calls these Skoda crystal lights, but they're just typical matrix LEDs that you've seen in dozens of other cars now. The rear lights are also fully LED, as you would expect, and it also has mood lighting inside. Although as an EV, maybe if you would like to one-pedal drive it, you can't really. You can select either D or B modes for drive. So D is regular drive, and when you lift off it kind of coasts. But if you put it in B mode, then you get full regen whenever you lift off. Or you can just leave it in D and use the paddles behind the wheel to adjust between the three settings of regen. And speaking of shifting into drive, this has to be the weirdest looking automatic gearbox or whatever selector, transmission selector, let's call it. It is such a dinky little thing, and it's not the best to use, to be honest. In fact, I think this is one of the few areas where the ID.4 is better. Volkswagen essentially copied the transmission selector solution from the BMW i3, so it's right here within reach of your hand. When you extend it, even when it's on the steering wheel, you can just tap it into drive and then reverse. This car also has an advanced head-up display that shows you, for instance, when you're about to, or when the car thinks you're about to hit something in front of you, either another car or some random obstacle. The driver's seat is fully electric, and it has a memory function. Basically, if you spec it all the way up with all the bells and whistles, this actually feels quite luxurious. It's definitely the most luxurious Skoda I've ever been in. And I have been aboard the Superb with the Lauren and Clement special pack, or whatever it's called. But somehow this feels more special, with its slightly more futuristic design. Well, it's futuristic by Skoda standards, by Skoda's more conservative standards. It's a great vehicle, and if you can live with a little bit less boot space, Skoda will soon introduce the Enyaq Coupe, which is It's equivalent of the Volkswagen ID.5, which is the ID.4 coupe. So imagine something the size of a BMW X4-ish, but electric and with a Skoda badge. The concept that previews the Enyaq coupe has already been shown, and it's quite an interesting looking thing. If you like SUV coupes, then you will definitely love that as well. All in all, the Enyaq is a great effort by Skoda to make an electric crossover. I think it's a better and slightly cheaper choice than the VW ID.4. It's a slightly more traditional looking vehicle, but it has the same underpinnings and specifications, so you're not really missing out on anything if you don't buy the VW. It's very comfortable, its interior is very, very pleasant, it has a lot of tech, all the connectivity things you could imagine, like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are wireless, of course. Adaptive cruise control, heated seats, memory function for the electric driver's seat. It's a very compelling vehicle that I'm sure will find a lot of homes, and many people will really, really like it. This pretty much sums up my impressions of the Skoda Enyaq. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.